Go.
Well, thank you very much, Lynn. And what a very poignant day it is for us to be gathered here this evening to talk about, to have the space, a very safe space, to think aloud, and that is allowed, and to be able to express our feelings, to not only think, but to talk aloud, and that is also allowed. Now, I have bought a piece of myself, a piece of my new self, and they are two of my prosthetic legs. And I invite you to pass them around and to hold a prosthetic, if some of you have never held a prosthetic before, because that was the position I was in. The bombings happened 9 years ago. 10 years ago, I would never have known what a prosthetic was, looked like, or felt like. And an amputee was something that was, to me, in my mind, a returning war veteran rather than someone that was of my age that had a whole life ahead of them. 10 years ago, I also thought that terrorism was an isolated series of events that happened to someone else, somewhere else, and that was until I became the recipient of the actions of a suicide bomber. My journey of a life with the direct effects of hatred, of division, and of destructive ideology started at precisely 8:50 a.m. on Thursday, the 7th of July, 2005. Now, on that morning, events absolutely, I believed, conspired to ensure that I boarded the same tube carriage as the suicide bomber at exactly the same time. And what struck me was that we were just seconds out of our journey, onto our journey, and in the time it just takes to draw a breath or to click your fingers, my life and those around me changed forever. I didn't know that morning that the man standing between myself and the suicide bomber would ultimately become my shield. But in doing so, he would lose his life. I didn't know that I would face my own death, and in the process of doing so, gain transformational insights into what it means to be alive. I guess the big question for me that has been reoccurring over the last 9 years is, what does it actually mean to be part of humanity? And it's a subject that's filled many thoughts, many times of great despair for me, and also times of great hope, and indeed formed many pieces of elaborate and lengthy writing. I believe I am the living testament to our interconnectivity and the power of its pull. For on that fateful morning, I was stripped of my identity. To the bomber, I wasn't Gill Hicks. He didn't know me. So therefore, this wasn't personal. He didn't set out to kill or maim me. I, to him, was a member of the them as opposed to the us. He was just one person who made a single choice in that precise moment to take his life, and in doing so, aim to kill and maim as many lives as he could. Now, at the point of rescue, so I was without an identity, at the point of rescue, my label was Priority 1. And that indicated that I needed absolute urgent medical attention. At the point of my admission to hospital, my label changed from Priority 1 to a very chilling, one unknown, estimated female. When I've read the position that I was in, my little sheet said that I had lost approximately 75% of my blood, that I'd had 3 cardiac arrests, and that I had arrived at the emergency room with no pulse. I was apparently gone for 28 minutes. Now, rather than calling time of death, not a single person was prepared to give up on me. And I, of course, have quizzed this time and time again with that team to say, what was it? What was it that you never gave up? Because all it would have taken that morning in the string of people that were involved in my rescue was one person to look at my body and think, this is hopeless. There's nothing more I can do. Let's go to the next. And not one single person did. Now, it was agreed within the resuscitation room that they would continue for a further 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And that was because for medical protocol, it was under the belief that if we really go on here, we're bringing back someone, for all intents and purposes, will be brain dead. And so is that our job? Should we be saving life, or should we be saving a life that has some quality? So the team agreed for a further 3 minutes and 30 seconds. As the 3-minute mark passed, they received a pulse on their monitor. So I am here by 30 seconds. This label, one unknown, estimated female, has had a completely profound effect on me, on both the building of my life post the bombings, but also the direction that I've chosen to concentrate my efforts in what I call my second life. What the label told me was the brilliance of humanity, that so many people had made their own individual choice to put their own lives at risk to come and save one unknown estimated female. And to each of those people that made that choice to rush down into that tunnel towards danger, they did so without a concern of who I was, of the colour of my skin, of my cultural background, of whether I had money or didn't have money, whether I was of faith or no faith at all. All that mattered was that I was a precious human life, and that has really stayed with me. Their actions taught me the power of empathy. And it's empathy that sits at the core of all that I do, and indeed informed all that I do within my not-for-profit work. For the past 9 years, I've devoted my work, and I guess my work is seamless with my life. And I've devoted this to aiming to understand the seduction of extremist ideologies that can lead to violent action, and indeed how we can work towards building a model of sustainable peace. I'm a great believer in dialogue, why indeed even these evenings and gatherings are so fundamental to the core of our society. I've often wished, and it's not just dialogue, but it's also the power of listening to each other. And I've often wished that I could rewind the time, and the suicide bomber was called Jermaine Lindsay. And I've often pondered and thought, if Jermaine Lindsay had asked me before he presumed I was his enemy, what would the outcome have been? Now, I remember the first time that I saw his picture in the newspaper, and I guess I had many anticipations of what I would see. I was anticipating seeing the face of a monster. But instead, there, looking at me from this picture in the newspaper, was the face of a boy. And he was barely out of school. He was 19, he was newly married, and he was expecting a baby. He was a convert to Islam, and he was raised in the UK. His colleague made the suicide video message on behalf of their mission. 4 Northern English lads, ranging in age from 18 to 30. Now, my quest to understand started the moment I looked at their image and I read their words. And in this video, in a very heavy Yorkshire accent, this man, Mohammed Sadiq Khan, said, "I'm going to keep this short and to the point, because it's all been said before by far more eloquent people than me. And our words have no impact on you. Therefore, I'm going to talk in a language that you understand. Our words are dead until we give them life with our blood. I'm sure by now the media's painted a suitable picture of me. This predictable propaganda machine will naturally try to put a spin on things to suit the government and to scare the masses into conforming to their power and wealth-obsessed agendas. I, and thousands like me, are forsaking everything for what we believe. Our driving motivation doesn't come from tangible commodities that this world has to offer. Our religion, Islam, obedience to the one true God, Allah, and following the footsteps of the final prophet and messenger Muhammad, this is our ethical stances are dictated. Your democratically elected governments continuously perpetuate atrocities against my people all over the world. And you support them directly, which makes you responsible, just as I am directly responsible for protecting and avenging my Muslim brothers and sisters. Until we feel security, you will be our targets. And until you stop the bombing, gassing, imprisonment and torture of my people, this fight will not stop. We are at war, and I am a soldier. Now you too will taste the reality of this situation. That video was released on the 1st of September 2005. I've talked and I've listened to hundreds of extremists, both in the UK and in the Middle East, and I roughly gain the same sentiment as that I've just read out, that there is a real belief that they are working for the good, with the approval of God, and that they have a purpose. They are essentially making a difference. So how do we fight an ideology? I believe it's by presenting an alternative, by countering the propaganda and creating something that is more desirable and has more worth than the destructive and violent actions encouraged by extremist groups. The trick is how and what, and as we now can see rolling out within the world, how quickly. Because for every day that passes, another young person is converted to radicalisation, and in some areas, another generation is created. In some places, in Pakistan, for example, it is considered an honour, a great honour, if your child has volunteered to offer their life for the cause, to become a martyr. Often a plaque is placed on the door to recognise the family of that home and to give congratulations. This can't be fought with military action. We need to hear this. We need to appreciate the true depth of what we're up against, and we need to build more effective tools in our arsenal to win over the people and diminish the teachings of those who wish to create division. I propose that we match every destructive act with a constructive action, that we increase our willing to live in a world where its people are confident within themselves. We need to find ways to unite and to reach out to one another. As Lynn said, in 2008, I walked approximately 500 kilometres from the area in which 3 of the 4 bombers came from in the north of England down to London. And it took about a month on the road. And this project was called Walk, Talk. Very simple. And I challenged everyone. We went through 22 towns and cities, and anywhere that had division, I said, look, the most difficult and challenging thing for me is to walk. So I urge you, come and walk and talk with someone who you believe your ideas are opposed from. And that started off from being Muslim and non-Muslim, and it changed as we went through each town and city to be maybe worklessness and people in work, youth and the elderly. And we started to see these sort of stranger match people walking together. And I must just share a very quick story, and that is, at the beginning of the walk, there was a group of neighbours, a set that lived across the road from each other. One neighbour was Muslim, one was non-Muslim. The non-Muslim woman said, "Well, I never say good morning to you because you lot hate women." And the Muslim man said, "Oh, I don't hate women, I just show you some respect, I bow my head and I've never said hello." Within 10 minutes of talking to each other, I overheard a conversation where they were both complaining about the rubbish down at number 10. And I just thought, that's the beauty of understanding that what unites us is far greater than what divides. Then in August this year, we responded to the Gaza conflict with a 2-hour silence, a project called Simply Cease. Now, this had an international reach, from New York to Pakistan to people in the UK, all gathering for a very important 2-hour silence. It had a profound effect on me, and the idea was born because I had a number of people coming up to me to say, "Gill, what can I do? There's nothing I can do to make an effect." And I thought, what if we collectively did nothing together? So essentially that's what Cease became. It was a collection of people that all gathered together to do nothing for 2 hours in silence. And that 2-hour silence had a very transformational effect on me. The effect is still lasting to this very day. So, I say, to combat the Islamic State and all other minorities who tip the balance of our peaceful existence, that we form a very big group. And that very big group consists of approximately 7 billion people. And that 7 billion people all have something in common, that they themselves, and they want to raise their children to live in a place without fear and to have a future. This group of human beings, I think, could be called the global state, or GS for short. And where there is division, we unite. Where people need to stand strong, they can do so knowing that they have the backing of all of us, that we're all right behind you. One voice may face persecution for speaking of peace. 7 billion voices is a very loud alternative. Thank you. Over to you.